Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:07. We made it to the Friday. We made it through all that rain, and, well, we pretty much all made it standing upright on our feet. I'm sorry, Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, no. That's too soon, Larry, to be joking.
She's fallen, and she can't get up. That was a rough video if you saw Elizabeth Warren falling down in a heap. I think Tammy Duckworth pushed her. If you see, she rolls up on her wheelchair right before.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Warren goes down. It's a rough look. The memes have already started. There are shots of President Trump teeing off at the Scotland links that he just opened, and he drives the ball, and then the next cut is the ball, entering the Senate chamber and hitting Elizabeth Warren in the head, knocking her over. Anyway, we'll all try to stay upright for this show. 6:35, we'll talk to Tim Graham at Media Research Center, because Kamala went on Colbert last night. And Gutfeld's going on Jimmy Fallon, by the way.
Whoa.
That's a big thing. We're going to get to that a little later. 7:05, Hans von Spakovsky. 7:35, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer. 8:05, Mary Margaret Olahan. And then at 8:35, James Fishback. I've been tracking this guy. You're going to like him. He's one of those financial gurus. He's been highly critical of your Fed chairman, Jerome Powell. And looking forward to hearing from him, James Fish. But I've been following him on his media appearances and social media, and it's pretty good. And speaking of that, he will also give us his perspective on the trade deals, which, if you look at the calendar, it is August 1st. It's the first day of August. It's Larry O'Connor here with Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning. Happy Friday, everybody.
And it's August 1st. I'm excited that it's August 1st, not just because, my God, we're 7 months into this year. That's phenomenal. But this is also the deadline on trade deals.
Yes.
That President Trump and his team sort of pushed back. That means starting, tomorrow, I guess, at midnight, or is it today?
Today,
at midnight?
Yeah, they're in place now.
All of those countries who did not make a deal over the course of the last several months with the Trump administration, or with the federal government, will automatically have their levies put forth, the tariffs, which means 35%, I believe. That's Canada, by the way. Canada did not figure out how to make a deal, which seems rather deliberate. But we did get deals. Just so you know, it's been a phenomenal flurry of activity. You know that we made the deal with the European Union over the weekend. We made a deal this week with South Korea. Last week we made a deal with Japan, Philippines, Indonesia. China is still hanging there, but they're actively talking. We've made deals with the UK. We've made deals with huge trading partners around the planet. We have not made a deal yet with China, although those negotiations are ongoing. We haven't made a deal with Canada. India also, I think, Patrice, you correct me if I'm wrong, is still hanging there.
Yes, I don't think it's finalized. I'd have to go back through.
But there have been there's been quite a bit of movement and quite a few more deals than people expected, let's just say. And on the whole, most people believe that all of these deals really work in favor of the American people and American businesses looking to do international trade. There are still some tariffs in place for some of those countries, not as high as 35%, certainly. But most of the countries, like the European Union, said, okay, we'll make a deal and you can keep tariffs at certain levels, 15% on some goods and services, et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, I mean, I'm searching to see how these are bad deals, unless the problem with these deals is that it's going to, in some way, inhibit businesses from doing trade with foreign nations. But it doesn't look like they are. And there's still an open question as to whether it's going to affect consumer prices here at home.
Yep, the last point, absolutely still an open question. So far, we haven't seen in the tariffs really spike the consumer prices across the board. You might see a category or two. So we'll see what happens next. I'm looking at a nice little neat chart put together by the New York Post on all of the different rates per country. And generally, 15% is the new baseline tariff for most countries. And some countries, though, they'll have a little bit of a higher rate. Syria, 41%, but I think with good reason. I think we can guess why. India, 25%. 25%, Tunisia 25%, but generally a lot of countries 15%. And some countries will have a delay in when the tariffs actually take effect, August 6th, so a few more days. I think there's just a general. I would suspect a general feeling that maybe the White House is ready or very close to announcing some of the trade deals with some of these other countries. So, I mean, we're going to see what happens with the markets. I think the markets closed down a few hundred points yesterday, but still very close to new highs over the past week. And I think there's just a general understanding that it's not only about the tariff rates, folks. It's also what's in some of these deals. I actually wrote about this for IWF just yesterday or the day before, where the administration is also through these deals. I just looked at the UK deal, for example. The EU deal. Removing a lot of those non-tariff barriers that make it really hard for U.S. companies to sell their products in other countries. A lot of these countries put these arbitrary regulations, quotas on top of U.S. goods, which make it impossible. Everything from labeling to licensing just to sell these goods. And it's like, well, if I have to jump through 100 hurdles just to get my canned peas to Aberjan, I can't even get the country's name out of my mouth, but if you have to go through all these hurdles, then it makes it impossible for these U.S. companies to compete, tariff rate aside. So I think it's really interesting to see that these tariff deals are not just about the levies being imposed on foreign goods coming into our country, but it's also to ensure that U.S. businesses can actually have competition, can sell their products in other countries without having to jump through ridiculous hoops.
Yeah, they went to industries and said, why aren't you trading more with Europe? Is it the tariffs? And they said, the tariffs suck, but actually this is the real problem, because if I go there, I have to spend all this money to do this and this to jump through their ridiculous regulatory hoops. And they said, okay, then we're going to try to fix that too. And in many cases, they did. Yesterday, as the deadline approached, there was a flurry of activity, as they like to say. That includes deals with Taiwan, which will have tariffs set at 20%. It's funny. Everybody was saying, geez, if you want to do a deal with the White House, make sure you do it early. The UK was one of the earliest ones. And I think that their tariffs are something like 5% or maybe 10%. I think it's very low. Taiwan will be at 20%. Pakistan, 19%. Israel, Iceland, Norway, Fiji, Ghana, Guyana, and Ecuador will be also fixed at 50%. Switzerland's going to be tariffed at 39%. That's a very funky number there. And when I think about it, Switzerland, okay, so Swiss Army knives and chocolate. Those are going to be affected by that. Oh, I guess some watches too.
Some watches, yeah.
But those big Toblerones, are those from Switzerland? Those giant Toblerone things?
Do you like those? I hate them. Ugh.
No, but I like to see people carrying them around. They're so giant and bulky. It's like, this is why Hershey bars are popular. You can just stick it in your pocket and then it'll melt and ruin your jeans. But it's not going to happen with a Toblerone.
That is a problem, yes.
Also hanging there, by the way, so it looks like Mexico is on the verge of making a deal, which will put more pressure on Canada, by the way. The Canada cheese will stand alone. Yesterday morning, Trump was engaged directly with the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, and they ended up agreeing to a 90-day negotiating period. The current 25% tariff rate staying in place, down from 30%, and it should go down further. But again, Canada not really paying much attention. It'll be fascinating because Canada is a major trading partner.
Absolutely.
So let's see what happens.
Yeah.
But that's where things stand right now on this new dawn of tariffs. And I suspect there will be a lot of people who just get past the deadline like they did. They're going to wake up this morning and say, oh, maybe we should finish that deal. He was serious. He really is putting the tariffs on. And then we'll have a flurry again. We're going to talk to James Fishback about this, economist, finance dude, and self-made man. He's coming up at 8:35. Right now it's 5:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Yesterday, we told you that Kamala Harris had announced that she will not run for governor of California. And then just on the heels of that announcement, later in the morning, she made this announcement.
Just over a year ago, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. 107 days, traveling the country, Fighting for Our Future, the shortest presidential campaign in modern history. It was intense, high stakes, and deeply personal for me and for so many of you. Since leaving office, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on those days, talking with my team, my family, my friends, and pulling my thoughts together. In essence, writing a journal that is this book, 107 Days.
All right, I'm going to let you finish, Kamala, but let's just pause there. So she's been pulling her thoughts together, Patrice, which, good for her. And she put together a journal, and now she's calling the book 107 Days. And she kept emphasizing that in the announcement here, shortest campaign in history. Clearly, this is, part of the excuse that she's supposed to be applauded for doing what an amazing job she did, given the fact that she only had 107
she was
days.
Up against.
This myth that there was low expectations because she only had 107 days. Number one, she knew that when she accepted the nomination. And by the way, by every account, she ruthlessly seized that nomination. She forced Biden into that endorsement the day that Biden announced that he was pulling out of the race. She sharpened her elbows and kept anybody from even attempting to challenge or to suggest that there should be some sort of vote at the convention. She knew what she wanted. She seized it. She grabbed it. She stole it. And, by the way, yes, she only had 107 days. She was also handed a complete and total campaign apparatus already put in place and already functioning, with close to $1 billion already raised, not for her, but for Joe Biden. And finally, and frankly, most important of all, as she assumed that role, she didn't actually have to work to get the nomination. She didn't have to worry about any primary any caucus or any debate or any challenge. I think if you asked anyone who wanted to be president, what would you rather do? Work for 2 years raising money, putting together a campaign apparatus, and stumping in New Hampshire and Iowa and South Carolina and doing primary after caucus after primary caucus? Or would you like to be handed the nomination with all that money already raised and the campaign infrastructure already created? You don't have to worry about winning any primary and caucuses, and we'll just make you the nominee a month before the convention. I'm pretty sure most candidates would say, oh, yeah, I'll take that second one. I'll take the 107 days option. So to suggest that this is a liability is just a complete BS. But it's what they're going with because, they lie a lot.
I actually think the money is huge and the apparatus was huge, but still even bigger. The fact that she was part of the administration, she was number two. Frankly, you could make a case that she was running for a presidency since the first day that she stepped into office with Joe Biden.
4 years. That's right.
4 years. She had press. She had access to the entire administration. She could work with Congress, and she did to be the tie-breaking vote on all of the major legislation that the Biden administration passed. She had every single opportunity to be on the lips of every person in the United States. So she was also coming in with the power of the incumbency, just like Joe Biden had. This is unfortunately what a lot of leftists, and particularly women of color who are on the left do, which is they cloak their elitism in victimhood. She was not a victim. She's actually one of the sitting on one of the most elite perches in the entire political realm, being the number two gal and easily stepping into the number one role. So spare me with all of the woe is me. I had it. I was up against the wall. I had all these juggernauts on my back.
Such a handicap. No. Yes. But this is the tone of it. All right. So 107 Days is the name of the book. Are you going to buy it, by the way?
Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. If I have never bought an Obama book, including a Michelle Obama book, why in the world would I want a Kamala Harris book? And it is Kamala Harris. Kamala.
Oh, look, you're going to get me in trouble. She was wearing a camel hair jacket, by the way, when she announced this. All right. Here's the rest of her announcement video.
With candor and reflection, I've written a behind-the-scenes account of that journey. I believe there's value in sharing what I saw, what I learned, and what I know it will take to move forward. In writing this book, one truth kept coming back to me. Sometimes the fight takes a while, but I remain full of hope. and I remain clear-eyed. I will never stop fighting to make our country reflect the very best of its ideals, always on behalf of the people. So thank you for being in this fight with me. I am forever grateful, and I cannot wait for you to read this, and I'll see you out there.
All right, so here's the interesting thing about this. This video is a campaign video. That was a campaign message. That wasn't by my book. She's not telling us what's in the book, really, other than her reflections. Who cares about her reflections? Give us the details. Tell us the juicy bits. What was going on behind the scenes? When did you throw Joe under the bus? Did Nancy Pelosi coordinate with you? Did you have second thoughts about Tim Walz? What really made you think that he was going to be the manly man who's going to get the, but we're not going to get any of that. That entire video tells you that this is just a campaign book to try to move on to the next step in her career.
Well, but it's not surprising. The fact that she turned down running for California the gubernatorial race there told us everything we needed to know, that she absolutely is going to go 100% all in 2028. Yes. And she's doing it in 2020, what are we, 5 right now? So she's trying. Maybe she thinks that by doing this, she can also kind of clear the deck. So she's sending a message to everyone, to all of her potential rivals. Hey,
that's right.
I'm here. I've already put my stake in the ground. So you better not even try. The hilarious thing is those folks are probably kicking themselves that they didn't run against her last year. They probably would have easily handily beaten her. So I don't know. I don't think she's going to get the bounce that she thinks she will.
It's 524.
All right. Will we finally see Hillary Clinton in an orange jumpsuit? Boy, the latest documents released, declassified documents, point to Hillary Clinton in this whole huge Russiagate. We're going to, debunk all of this and explain all of this and more. Stay with us. It's O'Connor and Company at 5:30.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:37. Good morning. Very robust Friday morning here in the nation's capital, the first day of August. House of Representatives are still in recess, so it's safe to drive around downtown. Coming up later in the program at 6:35, Tim Graham of Media Research Center on Kamala's Big Night on Colbert. 7:05, Hans von Spakovsky on these Senate confirmations that still seem stalled. Let's go. 7:35, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer on Russia hoax gate. And at 8:05, Mary Margaret Olahan. 8:35, James Fishback. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Happy Friday, Larry. Let's go. Let's get some Boys to Men and kick it into high gear.
Yeah, Michael Shelton, fresh off of his cataract surgery, has been empowered to bring in defunk, as they say.
On
I'm
Fridays.
down with it.
I'm telling you. I mean, I know our listeners love a little bit of Boys to Men like they love, yacht rock.
Well, not in the same way, but we'll leave it at that.
There's an appreciation.
Right. Yesterday, we had yet another document declassified, this time from the office of Senator Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Now, this is a compendium to the other declassifications we've enjoyed over the last week from DNI Tulsi Gabbard, and we're still anticipating another declassification from the CIA, as Director Ratcliffe announced on Maria Bartiromo's show on Sunday. That said, let me summarize what we learned yesterday. And the document in question is the annex to Special Prosecutor Durham's report after he had analyzed and looked at the entire Russiagate hoax and how the Steele dossier was utilized by the intelligence community to create the narrative, and I do mean create the narrative, that Russia had successfully interfered with our election, and they did it because they favored Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. Both of those conclusions were reached by Barack Obama without any intelligence to back up those conclusions, and then he directed his intelligence community to create that assessment and find intelligence to back up that conclusion. That right there is, I think it's illegal. I think it's illegal for the intelligence community to be utilized falsely for political purposes.
Absolutely.
Color me crazy. especially because it was meant specifically to undermine Donald Trump's ability to perform his function as president of the United States, which, by the way, is a violation of Donald Trump's civil rights. You have a right to function and fulfill the obligations that you've been elected to, the office that you've been elected to. That's a law on the books. You're not allowed to encumber somebody from actually carrying out his elected office, which is exactly what they attempted to do. They tried to encumber, and I think in many cases succeeded in encumbering Donald Trump from performing the duties of President of the United States, and they used our FBI and our CIA to do it. All right, that said, that's all we knew going into yesterday. Robert Durham was the special prosecutor. He's a U.S. attorney. He investigated all of this. He put out his report. There was a classified annex to that report, a sub-report that a compendium to the public report that was classified, had lots of sensitive stuff that had been redacted. This was released yesterday. There's still some redactions, but a whole ton of information was released. And the biggest smoking gun, the biggest bombshell, Hillary Clinton personally approved this plan. Hillary Clinton personally approved it in July of 2016, just days before James Comey and the FBI took up the investigation and started the Crossfire Hurricane counter investigation into the Trump campaign that led to FISA warrants. Also, the Steele dossier, which everybody knows is invalid, everybody knows is unverified, everybody knows is garbage. The Steele dossier was used all over the place to justify this thing, even though John Brennan and James Comey and James Clapper all testified otherwise. They all claimed that the Steele dossier had no bearing on their investigation and that they didn't utilize it for any of their assessments, when in fact they did. Also, a blockbuster piece of information, emails between Debbie Wasserman Schultz, then the chair of the Democratic National Committee, and an individual named Leonardo Bernardo. That sounds like a made-up name, but it is not. Who was this Bernardo person? He worked for a foundation called the Open Society Foundation, otherwise known as the George Soros Foundation.
Yes.
An individual with the George Soros Foundation was emailing with Debbie Wasserman Schultz as early as January and March of 2016. Soros was checking on his investment. This guy was writing and saying, listen, this email scandal with Hillary, what's going on? Debbie Wasserman Schultz was replying and saying, now they think that, first of all, they think that they've stemmed the tide of the investigation thanks to, as she put it, timely deletion of emails. So in other words, don't worry, we obstructed justice and deleted evidence fast enough that the FBI isn't going to find any of that, number one. And number two, as early as March of 2016, Debbie Wasserman Schultz in these emails was openly discussing utilizing a new piece of created opposition research to falsely tie Donald Trump to the Russian mafia. And in those emails, it's already discussed that the FBI and the CIA would participate in that narrative and affirm the opposition research. This is a huge blockbuster. And you know how I know it's huge, Patrice? The mainstream media barely talked about it at all yesterday. See, they can't. It's very hard for them to talk about this because they're part of it. And and they'd have to retract the last 10 years of their work.
I mean, this is absolutely explosive to recognize where the DNC, with the Hillary Clinton campaign and Hillary Clinton herself, and the Open Society, which is George Soros, and the Obama administration were working so hard to undermine the incoming president of the United States. Number one, to halt his, to interfere in the U.S. election, to manipulate people, to ensure that President Trump would not get elected. And he still got elected against those odds. And then now for them to spend the waning months in office trying to do everything to not only, as you said, ensure that he couldn't carry out the duties of his office, but also to see the kind of narrative in the minds of half of the people in this country that he was an illegitimate president, that he was a puppet of a foreign government, and that he should not be trusted with the power that he was given because he had been elected by this country. I mean, what they did was nasty, dirty, and disgusting, and they thought they got away with it. But thank goodness that we have people in office willing to declassify this information and expose what actually is a huge secret that was in the open in Washington because of the classification. The regular folks like us, we didn't get to know this. It's scandalous.
And there's more. So we'll get to it in a moment. It's 5:45.
Later this morning on the Chris Plante Show, the communist penitentiary face Brennan goes on MSDNC to perpetuate the lie about their Russiagate conspiracy. 9 a.m. on WMAL.
Did you tell him that the Steele dossier had been financed by his political opponents?
No, I didn't even think I used the term Steele dossier. I just talked about additional material.
But did he have a right to know that?
That had been financed by his political opponents? I don't know the answer to that. It wasn't necessary for my goal, which was to alert him that we had this information.
That's James Comey speaking with George Stephanopoulos, talking about the Steele dossier when he briefed President-elect Trump in early January 6th, ironically, and he only briefed him on one part of the Steele dossier, and that had the most salacious part about the idea that Trump had prostitutes in Moscow on a bed that Barack Obama had stayed on.
And a weird bodily
fascinating that that's the element that he decided to brief Trump on. Never told him that it was funded and financed by Hillary Clinton. Never told him that they didn't think it was true and that there was no verification of this. Didn't tell him that it had inspired an ongoing FBI investigation that was still going on at that moment when the FBI director briefed him. And then he says, did he have a right to know? And James Comey says, I don't know the answer to that question. Yes, he does know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Also, here's James Comey in an interview with Bret Baier talking about that Steele dossier.
When did you learn that the DNC and Hillary Clinton campaign had funded Christopher Steele's work?
Yeah, I still don't know that for a fact.
That's a lie. He knew that as early as August of 2016. These documents show that Comey and Brennan and Clapper and Barack Obama and Joe Biden were all briefed about the origins of this information, and they all knew that it came from the Clinton campaign. Tony Shaffer, by the way, a former intelligence officer with the United States Army, is going to join us to discuss this coming up at 7:35. We'll also speak with Tim Graham at 6:35 because, again, the media is part of this story. CBS, ABC, and NBC News spent 2,300 minutes talking about the Trump-Russia story in 2016 and 2017. This year, those same three networks have spent less than 3 minutes on the new revelations.
Oh, funny how little time they have for something as important as correcting the record.
Yeah. Hillary Clinton approved this plan. And it's written in these emails, in this documentation, that the reason that she approved the plan was because they needed a distraction. In fact, it's in the emails here. It says this should distract people. Distract people from what? Her crimes. Her use of an illegal, unverified, unapproved, and unsecure email server for containing state secrets as Secretary of State. The point is, I'm quoting more from these documents, the point is making the Russian play a U.S. domestic issue. In other words, we need Russia to be a campaign issue in this election. We need to tie Trump to Russia. And one of the emails said that's the plan, and we have evidence that is regrettably still unavailable. So what did they do? They created the evidence.
They manufactured it.
They bought and paid for it.
Larry, the big picture in my mind, if this is what the federal government would do to one person, the manufacturing of evidence, the dirty tactics, and the manipulation of people's emotions, using the media, using people, people in office, using every lever of government to create a massive worldwide scandal, this is what they would do. What wouldn't they do?
That's right. One last note here. This is a handwritten note by John Brennan. They can't say, because a lot of times they're saying, oh, those emails with George Soros Foundation, that's just Russian disinformation. I kid you not. That was their excuse 4 years ago when the Durham report first came out. Debbie
Yes.
Wasserman Schultz said, "Oh no, Russia faked those emails. I don't even know who that Bernardo Leonardo guy is over at George Soros."
Leonardo.
Well, they can't claim that about this. This is a handwritten note by John Brennan. August 3rd, 2016, just a few days after the FBI had created the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Listen to this handwritten note. We're getting additional insight into the Russian activities that alleged approval by Hillary Clinton on July 26th of a proposed plan by one of her foreign policy advisors, Jake Sullivan, to vilify Donald Trump by stirring up a scandal claiming Russian interference by the Russian security services. That was in his own handwriting on August 3rd. He knew this was, quote, approved by Hillary Clinton to stir up a scandal claiming Russian interference. They knew it was fiction,
Yes.
but they went ahead with it. They used it, and they slimed Donald Trump even after he won the election to prevent him from functioning his duties properly. And this was not just an assault on that election and on President Trump. It was an assault on the voters, on the people of the United States who chose Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. That was our crime. So they decided to punish us for it.
It was
Much
a vote
more
on democracy, an assault
this
on
very
democracy.
big story
Yeah.
as the morning develops. It's 5:54.